For 84 years, the truth about what happened over Los Angeles has been buried. Not just classified, not just forgotten, deliberately erased. I'm one of the last men alive who was there that night. February 24th, 1942, 3 months after Pearl Harbor. When we fired 1,400 rounds of anti-aircraft artillery at something in our skies. Something that shouldn't have existed. The government called it war nerves. The papers called it mass hysteria. But I was on gun emplacement 7. I saw it with my own eyes. I felt the concussions when our shells exploded directly against its hull. And I watched it sit there, completely unaffected, before it simply drifted away. This February marks the 84th anniversary of that night. Most of my battery is dead. The witnesses are gone. The evidence has been lost. But before I join them, I'm breaking my silence. Because what we fired at over Los Angeles wasn't a weather balloon. It wasn't Japanese aircraft. And it sure as hell wasn't war nerves. It was something the military has hidden for nearly a century. My name is Robert Mitchell, Private First Class, 37th Coast Artillery Brigade, United States Army. I turned 19 years old 2 weeks before Pearl Harbor was bombed. When the Japanese attacked on December 7, 1941, everything changed overnight. I was working at a lumber yard in Pasadena. By December 10th, I was standing in line at the Army recruitment office with 200 other boys. Most of us had never even held a rifle. They processed us through Fort MacArthur in San Pedro. Basic training was compressed from 8 weeks to 3. We didn't have time for the usual military protocols. The entire West Coast was on edge. Every night, people expected the Japanese to invade California. Battery B, 37th Coast Artillery Brigade. Our unit operated 4 3-inch anti-aircraft guns positioned along the coastline. Our orders were simple. If anything flies over Los Angeles without identification, shoot it down. Just sandbags, concrete, and 4 massive artillery pieces pointing at the sky. Each gun required a crew of 7 men. Loader, fuse setter, rammer, 2 trainers for horizontal and vertical aim, a gunner, and a section chief. I was the loader. My job was to lift the 15-pound shells from the ready box and hand them to the fuse setter. In combat conditions, we could maintain a firing rate of 15 rounds per minute. Theoretically, we drilled constantly those first few weeks. Up at 0500. PT, breakfast, gun drill, lunch, more gun drill, dinner, night watch. Sleep when you could. The officers kept saying the Japanese invasion was imminent. We believed them. Then came February 23rd. The night before it happened. A Japanese submarine surfaced off the coast near Santa Barbara, about 120 miles north of us. Around 7:30 that evening, it fired 16 shells at the Elwood oil field. Most missed. One hit a derrick. Minimal damage, but the psychological impact was enormous. The Japanese had struck the American mainland. Not some distant territory. The continental United States. Panic spread through Southern California like wildfire. That night, our battery was placed on full alert. Every gun emplacement from San Diego to San Francisco went to battle stations. Air raid sirens wailed across Los Angeles. A total blackout was ordered. 3.5 million people plunged into darkness. I remember standing by gun emplacement 7, staring at the darkened city. Usually, Los Angeles at night looked like a sprawling constellation of lights. That night, it was just void. Nothing happened February 23rd. We stood ready all night. Dawn came. Stand down order. We rotated watches and tried to sleep during the day. February 24th started normally. Drills, equipment maintenance, the usual military routine. But there was tension in the air. Everyone felt it. Sergeant Kowalski told us at dinner formation, "Intelligence expects another attack. Could be submarines, could be aircraft. Stay sharp." Night watch assignments came down at 1800 hours. I drew the midnight to 0400 shift. Gun emplacement 7, which meant I'd be awake when it started. The blackout began at 2100 hours. Los Angeles disappeared again into darkness. Only a few essential vehicles moved through the streets with hooded headlights. The city held its breath. I tried to sleep in the barracks from 2100 to 2330. Couldn't. Too much adrenaline. Finally gave up and walked to the gun emplacement early. Corporal Davis was finishing the previous watch. "Quiet night," he said. "Nothing on the horizon. Maybe the Japs got scared off." I took my position at the ready box, checked the shell inventory. 147 rounds of 3-inch high-explosive anti-aircraft ammunition. Each shell painted olive drab with yellow markings. Each one capable of reaching 25,000 feet. At exactly 02:25 hours, February 25th, 1942, the warning came through. The field telephone rang. Sergeant Kowalski grabbed it, listened. His face went white. "Air raid. This is not a drill. Unidentified aircraft approaching from the ocean. All batteries to battle stations." 7 of us sprinted to gun emplacement 7. I was at the ready box in 15 seconds. The others took their positions. Fuse setter, rammer, trainers, gunner, section chief. The air raid sirens began wailing across the city. That haunting, undulating howl. Within 2 minutes, every light in Los Angeles was extinguished. Complete blackout. 3.5 million people in total darkness. I strained my eyes toward the ocean. Couldn't see anything yet. Just darkness. The Pacific stretched out before us like a black void. At 02:37, the searchlights came on. 37 separate searchlight batteries positioned across Los Angeles. Massive carbon arc lights. Each one capable of illuminating objects 25,000 feet up. The beams swept across the sky, probing, searching, and then they found it. Oh God. Oh God. 37 searchlights converged on a single point, about 8,000 feet altitude, directly over Santa Monica. And there it was. It was massive. I'd never seen anything like it. The searchlights illuminated it from every angle. A huge, oval-shaped object. Just hanging there. I've thought about how to describe it for 84 years. What's the right word? Dirigible? No, too solid. Blimp? No, too symmetrical. Aircraft? Absolutely not. It looked metallic. The searchlights reflected off its surface with a dull, silvery sheen. No wings, no tail, no propellers. No visible means of propulsion. Just this enormous oval floating in our sky. The fire control officer's voice crackled through the field telephone. "Range, 8,000 feet. Bearing, 270 degrees. Speed, 0. Target is stationary. All batteries, fire." Gun emplacement 7 fired first. The concussion nearly knocked me off my feet. Boom! The 3-inch shell screamed into the sky. 5 seconds later, flash. The fuse detonated at 8,000 feet. Then the entire Los Angeles defense grid opened fire. Boom, 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 boom. Shell after shell after shell. The noise was apocalyptic. Continuous thunder. The ground shook. Windows shattered for miles from the concussions. I grabbed the next shell, handed it to the fuse setter. He spun the nose fuse to 8,000 feet. Rammer drove it home. Boom! The gun fired again. We settled into the rhythm. Grab shell, hand to fuse setter, ram, fire. Grab shell. Over and over. And through it all, I kept looking up at the thing. The searchlights held it perfectly illuminated. We were hitting it. I know we were hitting it. You could see the shell bursts exploding directly on target. It just sat there. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton stuffed in them. My ears rang despite the cotton. The barrel of gun emplacement 7 glowed orange from the heat. 1,400 rounds. That's the official count. 1,400 3-inch anti-aircraft shells fired into the sky over Los Angeles, each one exploding at 8,000 feet, each one creating a kill radius of 50 feet. And that thing never moved. Not once. Just hovered. Around 03:45, the firing slowed. We were running out of ammunition. Our ready box was empty. I had to run to the magazine for more shells. When I got back 3 minutes later, it was gone. Just vanished. The searchlights swept frantically across the sky. Nothing. The fire control officer's voice, "Cease fire! Cease fire! Target lost!" At 04:14 hours, the all-clear sounded. The air raid sirens gave 3 short blasts. Battle stations secured. The blackout ended. Slowly, Los Angeles flickered back to life. We stood there in silence, 7 exhausted men covered in soot and sweat, our ears ringing, our hands shaking, staring at an empty sky. Private Kowalski finally spoke. What the hell was that? None of us had an answer. At 0600 hours, our battery commander assembled us, Lieutenant Colonel Davis. He looked like he hadn't slept. Probably hadn't. "Gentlemen," he said, "last night you performed admirably against what we believed was an enemy attack. However, we have received word for Western Defense Command." He paused, looked at his notes, then looked at us. "The official determination is that there were no aircraft. What you fired at was likely weather phenomena. Atmospheric conditions, perhaps amplified by war nerves and anxiety following yesterday's submarine attack." I looked at the other guys. Weather phenomena? We'd all seen it, clear as day, illuminated by 37 searchlights. But this was the Army. You don't question your superior officers, especially not in 19... The Los Angeles Times ran a front-page story that morning. February 25th, 1942. The headline, "Army Says Alarm Real." The article described the air raid, the searchlights, the anti-aircraft fire, and they published a photograph. The photograph. Shot by a Times photographer from Long Beach, showing the searchlights converging on something. I bought 3 copies of that paper, saved them, because I knew that photograph was proof. But within 24 hours, the official story changed. February 26th, Navy Secretary Frank Knox held a press conference in Washington. His statement? The entire incident was a false alarm. There were no airplanes. It was just war nerves. War nerves. That's what they called it. As if 3.5 million people simultaneously hallucinated. As if 37 searchlight batteries all imagined the same thing. As if we fired 1,400 rounds at nothing. The Army countered, said it was real. Maybe Japanese aircraft, maybe a civilian plane, but something was definitely there. The military and the Navy contradicted each other for weeks. Then quietly, both stories disappeared. Other war news took over. The Battle of Los Angeles became a footnote. It was never forgotten. I was transferred to the Pacific Theater in April 1942. Served in New Guinea, Bougainville, the Philippines. Fought through the entire war. Came home in 1946. Used the GI Bill. Got a degree in engineering. Worked for Lockheed for 32 years. Married. 3 kids. 6 grandchildren. Normal life. But I never forgot that night. Over the years, I occasionally saw references to the Battle of Los Angeles in books about the war. Usually just a paragraph. Sometimes dismissed as mass hysteria. Sometimes attributed to a lost weather balloon. In 1983, the incident got renewed attention. A researcher named Scott Brown published an article about it. Used the Los Angeles Times photograph as evidence. That iconic image. Searchlights converging on something. Telling my story. But I was still working at Lockheed. Defense contractor. Security clearances. I couldn't risk my career. In 1992, the 50th anniversary, there was a small ceremony in Los Angeles, commemorating the event. By then, most of the witnesses were dead. The few who attended stayed quiet. The stigma, you understand. UFOs, little green men, tinfoil hats. Nobody wanted to be that guy. But I kept those newspapers. 3 copies of the Los Angeles Times, February 25th, 1942. Preserved in plastic sleeves. That photograph never let me forget. Then, in 2015, something changed. The Navy released the Tic Tac videos. The USS Nimitz encounter. Pentagon confirmed they were real. Suddenly, UFOs became legitimate. Congressional hearings, whistleblowers, David Grush, Ryan Graves, pilots testifying under oath, the government finally admitting, yes, we don't know what these things are. And I thought, we knew that in 1942. I'm 102 years old now. Most of my battery is dead. Corporal Davis died in 2008. Private Kowalski in 2012. Sergeant Anderson in 2019. I'm one of the last, maybe the last, who was actually there. On gun emplacement 7. Loading shells. Watching that thing just sit there while we tried to shoot it down. This February marks 84 years. 84 years since thousands of us witnessed something impossible. 84 years since the government told us it was weather balloons. 84 years since they ordered us to stay silent. I'm done staying silent. What we saw over Los Angeles that night wasn't Japanese aircraft. It wasn't a weather balloon. It wasn't war nerves or mass hysteria. It was a craft. A massive, oval-shaped craft with no visible propulsion that withstood 1,400 direct hits from anti-aircraft artillery, that appeared suddenly, hovered for 90 minutes, and disappeared without a trace. The ammunition expenditure reports are still in the National Archives. 1,400 rounds. You can verify it yourself. The Los Angeles Times photograph exists. You can see it. The searchlights. The thing they're illuminating. The government has known about UFOs since at least 1942. They knew we couldn't shoot them down. They knew these craft possessed technology beyond our understanding. And they've been hiding it for 84 years. I don't know. Maybe they were afraid of causing panic. Maybe they wanted to keep the technology for themselves. Maybe there were agreements, treaties, things we regular soldiers would never know about. All I know is what I saw. And what I saw was real. After Pearl Harbor, we were told the Japanese were coming. We manned our guns. We stood ready to defend our country. And when something appeared in our skies, we did our duty. We fired 1,400 rounds at it. It was something else entirely. Something that made our most advanced weapons completely irrelevant. The Battle of Los Angeles wasn't about Japanese aircraft. It was about the moment we discovered we weren't alone. And we've been covering it up ever since. I'm sharing this story now because time is running out. Not just for me, but for the truth. Every year, more witnesses die, more evidence disappears, more official records get lost. But I was there. I loaded the shells. I watched them explode against that craft. I saw it with my own eyes. And nobody can tell me it didn't happen. It will be 84 years since that night. Most of America has forgotten. The history books barely mention it. The government wants us to believe it was nothing. But it was something. And before I die, I want people to know the truth about the Battle of Los Angeles. We weren't shooting at weather phenomena. We weren't hallucinating. We weren't suffering from war nerves. We were defending Los Angeles from something not of this world. And for 84 years, they've been lying about it. This is my testimony. The testimony of a witness, one of the last surviving witnesses. To the night Los Angeles discovered, we're not alone. If you want to hear more stories like this, real testimonies from people who were actually there, subscribe to this channel. The truth is coming out, piece by piece, witness by witness. The government can't silence us all. Not anymore. Not after 84 years. My name is Robert Mitchell. I was 19 years old. I served my country. I kept the secret. But today, I break my silence. The Battle of Los Angeles was real. And it's time. Everyone knew.